So thank you, Ellie, from XConnect. Can I just maybe start with just asking you to introduce yourself and introduce your company, XConnect, please?
Yes, thank you very much. Fully recognise that this is the last session before lunch, and therefore every minute counts. I'm fully aware of that. Susan, if you notice anybody who's like passing out due to starvation, please let me know, and I'll kind of give a 10-minute slowdown at that point. Good morning. My name is Katz. I'm the CEO and founder of XConnect. We are a provider of global, real-time, trusted information to the communications industry. We provide services to most of the MEF members, hundreds of CPaaS providers, carriers. Mainly, it's all around providing information for routing, validation, and fraud mitigation. And we process around about 4 or 5 billion queries a month, and continue to do so. Last year, we acquired a company called Secure ID. They were one of the innovators in network API services. So we're kind of mixing those two sides of our number information services together with network API services.
Great. Well, I'm probably good to be on stage with you because I have less knowledge on this subject than most. So I'll probably be the one asking the relatively dumb questions, if that's okay, Ellie, just to get everybody up to speed. So we're talking about data in numbering. The industry started, as I understand, with numbering data for authoritative network information routing. I think, first of all, it'd be nice to explain what that actually means in layman's. But more to the point, we're talking about real-time subscriber intelligence now. So what has fundamentally changed in how we understand and use phone number data now?
That's a good question, probably because I asked you to say it. The journey has been quite interesting if we look over the last kind of decade of the role with which information is being utilized by the communications, the CPaaS, the carriers industry. And very much where it's kind of started out was actually an initiative triggered by the GSMA about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, around something called Pathfinder, which was to do with number lookup services. How can you find out information about this phone number in order to ensure you can accurately route your message or you can route your voice call and understand, based upon number portability, where this number is owned by what number. So that's authoritative information. It comes in-country from the number portability databases. You need to collate all of this on a global basis so you can give one simple answer: where's the information about this number and how do you successfully route on it? So that was kind of ground zero, and utilizes, say, billions of transactions on a monthly basis. Over the last, I would say probably the last few years, that's now been evolving from what we call network information to subscriber information. So taking that away from simply being how can you identify correctly the network, but actually now what information can be provided at the subscriber level. And information examples of those attributes are things like, what is a live score? Is this user, is this subscriber reachable at this point in time? What level of liveness is? And this is really important because if you're about to send a message, you're about to generate an API call, you really want to know whether that end subscriber is actually online, not online, Wi-Fi, not on Wi-Fi, and all of this is critical in order to ensure smooth and effective delivery of that. So that's kind of level one in subscriber information. And level two really is when you start talking about network APIs. And network APIs, has been mentioned a few times this morning, is information that is almost uniquely held by the mobile operator. Such information attributes like, has this number had a SIM swap in the last minutes, seconds, hours, days, weeks? Because if that has had a SIM swap on that phone, then that's a very high risk alert. So that's information where you're moving from network information, how do I route a call, how do I route a message, all the way through to how can I identify information about this subscriber? Is call forward being set up? Has there been a SIM swap? Can you do a KYC check? And that's all information that's now available through network APIs. And that's really one of the main journeys that we're seeing, is the evolution of information about phone numbers moving from network all the way through to subscriber. Pause. In parallel, there's a second movement that we're seeing as well. The first generation was all about authoritative information. So this is specific, authentic information whereby is a number being ported, yes or no, is an answer that is authoritative. That means the country regulator has built a process and the operators in that country utilize that process. So this is authoritative information. What we're now beginning to see emerge is what we call risk information, whereby this is identifying whether there's been risk elements associated with that phone number. Have we seen this phone number being utilized for fraud? Has it been utilized potentially by the fraudster? Has there been a victim associated with that? Has this phone number being used for AIT fraud, for IRSF? So these are two big journeys that we're seeing, the movement from network information to subscriber information, and at the same time, a big movement from authoritative information towards risk information.
Got it. Okay. Everybody with us so far?
Yeah, there's going to be a quick quiz before lunch.
Absolutely. Yeah. You'll be eating in the maids' quarters if you don't get that right. You've mentioned just a moment ago about liveness, which is a shift, I believe, in the market from validation to liveness. Knowing if a number's active, reachable, or has changed. How is that changing things like A2P, fraud prevention, and decision making in real time?
Yeah, so this is something that likewise has emerged very much just in the past few years. As gradually, or sadly not so gradually, termination rates on an SMS basis are continuing to increase, almost kind of country by country. And therefore puts more of an onus from an economic perspective as a CPaaS provider, say before I'm about to deliver an SMS OTP or before I'm about to deliver an RCS, it will be useful to identify, is that customer, is that reachable, is that live? Because otherwise you're going to be sending that SMS and you're going to be paying your 5 cent or your 25 cent or your 50 cent on a unneeded basis. So typically that information about the reachability of that number, the subscriber status of that number, was available via some of the signaling protocols that are used, SS7, HLR. So two changes are happening in that world. Again, this is almost in the past few years and accelerated in the past sort of 6 months. So change number one is that more and more networks on a global basis are significantly restricting access to the SS7 and HLR networks. For good reason, right? It is definitely an inherently unsecure protocol. And there's both kind of regulators and governments putting pressure, as well as InfoSec drivers to say, let's restrict control and access to that side. So that information, which was really helpful in the CPaaS industry, is now being restricted in access. That's issue number one. Issue number two, which is the positive side of that statement, is that there is actually now developing, we're working now with some of the first MNOs around the world who are utilizing some new Camara-based APIs, network APIs, that are looking to actually expose liveness information, right, subscriber status, and that can be done in real time. This is all real time we're discussing here. So that's the kind of shift that we're beginning to see from the kind of utilizing the legacy signaling technologies and that gradually evolving towards the new network APIs. There's, unfortunately, the rate of growth of the good side is not going as fast as the rate of decline on the bad side. So kind of the world in the middle where we are now, and I suspect where we will be for a good few years, therefore there has to be alternative indicators of, so rather than being, is this a definitive live, we call it liveness. Right? Have we seen enough information about this phone number? Has the phone number been ported in the last year? Have we seen activity being generated by that phone number? So these are liveness indicators, which in the situation where you can't get the definitive information, but these indicators are very strong, and certainly where you're being able to process hundreds of billions of queries, that allows you to give indicators about this phone number that helps provide, in essence, the live status, but doing it on an indicator basis rather than an authoritative basis. So those are 2 or 3 big changes that we're seeing. And again, this is very much underpinning kind of the foundations of efficient and productive messaging.
I don't like to use this word in your world, but is it almost a best guess that we're doing with the data to ensure we know what's happening? Yeah,
so definitely wouldn't like to use the words guess. I think we'd like to use the words signals and indicators. That's probably the smoother method. I mean, you could, if you want to talk about guessing, we could throw AI and a bit of ML into this as well, which can help. But really, it's when you're sitting on hundreds of billions of transactions and utilizing that and knowing which indicators are what. So if a number turns up on this particular register, then that kind of is a positive indicator of that has been a live activity happened on that number. So it's really utilizing exhaust data and information.
So much more accurate than it was
Yes.
previously. So you mentioned already SIM swaps, network APIs. Where does XConnect fit into that? Let's kind of looking forward a little bit. And how does that fit into the CPaaS industry?
So network APIs, it's interesting. If we assess this morning's presentations, network APIs, I think, were mentioned once or twice, which is not bad for us as an industry. I should point out, I was pinching myself to double check, are we actually at an MEF event? Why do I say that? Because it's now almost lunchtime, technically almost lunchtime, and no one's mentioned AIT. We've had a whole morning free of AIT, which means one of two things. Either AIT is finished as of this morning, right, which case great news, welcome to the Irish miracle. We can announce it at the next MEF event, right? Or we've kind of given up and say, right, let's talk about anything else other than AIT. So whichever one that is, please let me know at lunchtime, we can discuss.
Or has it just been accepted?
That's even worse, right? Let's not go down. The other actually interesting analysis from this morning was, I thought I literally had stepped back about 10 years of my life when twice, from two separate presenters this morning, was mentioned about HD voice and wideband voice. Oh my God, when was the last time anyone heard about G711 and G729? So that's quite exciting that this is now finally, I was about to say 10 years ago, probably more accurately 20 years ago, technology is coming to the forefront and obviously being driven by the whole AI, which actually needs the high definition voice to really work well. So well done, telecoms industry, right? We're now kind of coming into arguably the 19th century, right? BT, 180 years, so we're kind of, somewhere in that region. Anyway, yes, network APIs. We can argue and debate with the GSMA whether this is their third time lucky or fifth time lucky, right? You need to go back about 15 years ago to know when the first real efforts around network APIs were starting. But either way, we're definitely finally reaching the stage whereby we're now beginning to see carrier-grade levels utilization of network APIs today. And whether that is things like SIM swap, whether that's things like call forward or KYC or number verify, which we'll touch upon as well, after literally decades of talking about it, now there's hundreds of MNOs around the world which have enabled network API access to their network. And at the same time, we're now beginning to see the demand side actually finally be generated, because I think it was highlighted on the presentation this morning, was kind of, in a way, the solution is there, but what's the problem, right? The solution is there, what's the demand? And there was a comment that was made by Mattia this morning, which actually resonated with me very well, which is that from a CPaaS provider, if you're looking at entering into the network API services, it really is about a journey of stepping up in that enterprise stack. Because right now, it's a big change from being able to offer 1 million SMSs for the next month and 1 million calls in your normal CPaaS, loosely commoditized environment. You really need to be moving up that stack to identify where, when you're working with the enterprise, where do these network APIs fit in? Is it with your fraud department? Is it with your onboarding department? Is it with your cart abandonment team, right, that are looking to how to improve the onboarding process, the transaction process? So it's very much a world that's kind of not, I would say, naturally in home at a CPaaS provider's normal engagement with the enterprise. But ultimately, the demand is there, and it's very much kind of sector specific. So today, kind of the banking and the FI world is where we're beginning to see most take-up of these services, and they're driven by fraud. They need to make sure that, has there been a SIM swap? Is call forward being set up? Can I do a KYC check? All of these things are very much where the enterprise sector, that's the vertical that's focusing on that most today, is definitely in that FI world, the financial institution world. But all of that is a very different sale from a kind of classic sale today. So it's very much about a journey to move up that chain and up that enterprise stack when you're engaging with enterprise community.
Yeah, great to understand how it's evolving. Back to something Mattia said this morning as well. He talked about mode of authentication. So could you just let everybody know what is meant by number verify and give us some
Yes,
some insights
actually,
on that?
I'm going to do a little survey, mainly to check that you're alive. How many of you have heard of Number Verify from a GSMA perspective?
That's not bad.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I mean, but given that this is our ecosystem, it really should be 100%, would be my comment. So what I mean by that, Number Verify, in essence, is the new version, the secure version of number verification, of number authentication. So today, we use SMS OTP as the predominant way. We've heard today the volumes are still there massive, certainly decreasing kind of year on year. But the alternative methodology and the alternative technology that is going to bring in the more secure approach to SMS OTP is the Number Verify. So this is a GSMA terminology, something called CAMARA. That's where the standards are defined for network APIs. And in essence, Number Verify is the GDPR compliant, secure compliant, and it's what a number of regulators around the world are already turning around to their industries in their jurisdictions, are saying, thou shalt no longer use SMS OTP for financial transactions, and instead you need to use secure methods, whether that's kind of passkeys on one side, being utilized by parts of the industry, or network APIs, and the one we're talking about is Number Verify. And this is probably going to be, over time, one of the biggest changes that's going to happen macro level in the CPaaS community. Still now to date, the majority of SMSs in many countries is SMS OTP. That is declining, and that's slowly going to be picked up by Number Verify. Number Verify is a complex beast. I think that's a fair description to say from anyone who's actually involved in delivering it. Yes, it's secure. Yes, it's compliant. Yes, it's the more modern version. But it's not as simple as an SMS OTP. So again, working with, at aggregator level, working with the MNOs, working at the enterprise stack, this introduces kind of a new way of thinking. But however, this broadly is our future, and it's a really important thing to us to be engaging with as soon as we can. It's very much at the moment now, how many MNOs around the world? So there was an announcement just a few weeks ago that in the USA, they launched, all three networks launched Number Verify, actually 2.0, which was a big step up from what's called 1.0. In essence, the big difference between 1.0 and 2.0 is that the number verification that is done at the SIM level in 2.0 can be done even at Wi-Fi, not just on radio. So Number Verify 1.0 would only work when the subscriber was on the radio, but Number Verify 2.0, and clearly very important, and will make a fundamental shift in adoption, works even at the Wi-Fi level. So therefore now it's finally a viable alternative to SMS OTP. So there was an announcement, as I say, just a few weeks ago, through Aduna, launching Number Verify 2.0 in the USA. In the UK, most of the operators are going to be jumping on that bandwagon. Already started now, and by Q3 that should be complete. I would then say we're at the beginning of that journey rather than the end of that journey. But this is an exciting opportunity to be able to take place, an exciting migration. But as I mentioned, it's not trivial, and we look forward to working with our existing CPaaS customers and helping enable this and enable them ultimately to bring these services to their enterprise customers.
Yeah, and I think it was mentioned earlier, Microsoft already not using OTP. I guess they're using their own authenticator type services, but others, Google, and a number of the hyperscalers, not using OTP anymore. The slide I showed...
Just to pick up on that slightly, so if you look at the recent announcements by Meta, by Google, by the hyperscalers, is very much reflecting that statement, but actually highlighting the role of Number Verify. Yeah. So Meta made very clear statements, SMS OTP no longer, that's not an overnight stop, but that's a direction of travel, which we're already seeing as an industry. But at the same time, they're very clearly talking about this is going to be replaced by alternative authentication methods, and very clearly, Number Verify. Interestingly enough, both 1.0 and 2.0 are being highlighted by them, and this is a journey that's happening. There was a white paper they issued just a couple of months ago. Google and others have made similar announcements of that direction of travel. So this is something that we definitely want to be conscious of. And again, we're here to work with partners in enabling and bringing these services to the enterprise market.
Great. Thank you. So we have another minute on the clock. There's no bleeping in front of us at the moment, or I don't feel Susan's eyes boring into the side of my head to get off. Are there any? They are, okay. Do we have any questions? Eugene?
What do you think about silent authentication?
Right, so that question is an excellent question.
Ellie, can I just repeat? The question was, what do you think about silent authentication? So
Right.
some people...
Just to highlight, silent authentication actually is an alternative name for number verify. Right, so there goes problem number one, that here we are in the industry and we actually don't even have yet an agreed nomenclature. And by the way, you can imagine at the enterprise level, confused as hell when they're hearing 3 different terminologies for literally what is the same thing. So there's actually, I think I'm mentioning this afternoon, there's a new working group that we helped set up here at the MEF, which is very much aimed at this point, which is the engagement so far in the network API industry has very much been at industry level, industry association level, has very much been working what we call the south side, i.e. working with the MNOs, working with the operators to make sure they can expose these services. But really, Gene, based upon your question, we need to look at how do we deliver these services to the enterprise, and that's, am I allowed, if I started, I'm allowed to finish, I think that's how it works. So we as an industry need to collaborate together, and collaboration is absolutely key, that when we are engaging with the enterprise, we can bring with a consistent set of messaging, identify use cases, and by collaborating together, we can help increase awareness and education to the enterprise market and help drive that demand in a sensible way.
Okay, so I think we'll have to close there. I've been educated. Ellie, thank you ever so much for this chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Cheers.